Hi, I was asked to share my favorite Bible story with you, but I don't have a favorite Bible story. I just love every Bible story. God's Word is so amazing that you can't have a favorite. So I thought I would share one with you that I just recently told my class in a Zoom meeting. It's called Elisha Fed by the Ravens. So in order to set the background, King Ahab has now become the king of Israel. He is, according to the Bible, has done more evil in the eyes of the Lord than any other king before him. His wife is a lady named Jezebel. She is the queen. She came from a country named Sidon, and in Sidon, their belief was in Baal. Baal was their god, and when she moved to Israel, she took with her Baal, all her Baal prophets, priests, and she brought the whole Baal worship into Israel. And King Ahab just didn't seem to mind. He just said that was fine, and he allowed them to be worshiping Baal. There is someone who does mind. Someone who is very saddened, and it was God. God wanted his people to worship him and him alone. And so he went to his prophet Elijah, and he told Elijah to go to King Ahab. So Elijah traveled all the way to Samaria to see King Ahab, and he confronted King Ahab, and he says, "As the Lord, the God of Israel reigns, whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain until God says so." And then Elijah left the palace. He went across the Jordan River to the east side of the Jordan River to a little ravine called the Kerith Ravine. God directed him to go there, and there was water for Elijah to drink. And every night, I think this is so amazing, every night God sent ravens with meat and bread to feed Elijah, and every morning the ravens came with meat and bread and fed Elijah. God was taking such good care of his servant. But after, we don't know how long, maybe 6 months, 9 months of staying there, the brook dried up because there was no rain in Israel. And so Elijah had to leave, and God said to him, "I'm going to send you to a place outside of Israel called Zarephath. It's in the country of Sidon, and there's a widow that lives there who's going to take care of you." This widow has been questioning in her mind and her heart Baal worship. She just doesn't feel like it's right. He's not a god. There's got to be some God that is alive, that has power, that I can put my faith in. And so it was to this woman that Elijah was sent. So Elijah traveled from the Kerith Ravine all the way to Zarephath in Sidon. And when he arrived there, there was a woman, the widow, gathering a few sticks of wood because she was going to make a fire to cook some bread. Elijah said to the widow, can I please bother you to give me some water? I'm very thirsty." And the widow said, "Oh, no problem, I'll get you some water." And she turned away to start to go get water for Elijah. And then Elijah said, "Could you also give me a small piece of bread? I'm very hungry." And now the widow stopped. She turned around, she looked at Elijah, and she said, "I'm sorry. All I have is a handful of flour and a little bit of oil in my jug, and I'm gathering sticks right now, and then I'm going to go home, and I'm going to make this fire, and I'm going to take my little bit of flour and my little bit of oil, I'm going to mix them together, I'm going to make one last loaf of bread, and then I'm going to bake it, and I'm going to feed it to my son and myself, and then we're going to die." And Elijah said, no. My God says, "Don't be afraid. Go home, make that loaf of bread, take that oil that you have left over and the flour, make a loaf of bread, bring it to me, and then if you do that, your jar of oil and your jug of flour are never going to run out, be empty, until God sends rain again." Oh, I cannot imagine what that widow would have been thinking. That would have been so hard. Here she has this man who asks her for a loaf of bread, says his God is going to take care of her and make sure that her oil jar and jug are never empty, should she believe that man? Or should she make that last loaf of bread for her son, her only son? I can just imagine that toss-up that went on in that woman's mind as she went home. What should I do? Should I bake the bread for Elijah, or should I give it to my son? She decided to put her faith in God. She decided that she was going to trust in this God that Elijah talked about. And so she baked that bread and she brought it to Elijah and she gave it to him, and then she went home. And I can just, and again, imagine what was going in her heart, through her heart and mind. I hope I made the right choice. Will this God take care of me? Will this God provide for my needs? She went home, looked inside that oil jar, looked inside that flour jar, and saw flour and oil. And she took that flour and oil and made another loaf of bread and gave it to her son. And then she looked inside the jars again, and there was still flour and oil, and so she made a loaf of bread for herself. I remember loaves of bread are like just not very big, like a bun. And when she had finished eating, she looked in that jar again, and she saw that there was still flour and oil in it. And she put her trust in God. She trusted in him. She thought, this is the God who loves me, who takes care of me. Baal cannot do those things. I want to trust in Elijah's God, the God of Israel. He's alive. He's true. And for the next 3 years, that oil jar and that flour jug never went empty. And Elijah stayed with that widow until God decided it was time for rain to fall again in Israel. And then he sent Elijah back to visit King Ahab. I hope that you love this God that the widow discovered on that day in Zarephath, Sidon.